So like I said, what we're going to do today is a fairly easy to-do list application using React. So to start out, let's go ahead and bring up your Visual Studio Code. I'm going to create a new folder on my desktop. I'm going to just call it
It's called My Code Along.
My Code Along? Alright, My Code Along. My Code Along. We will go File, Open Folder, go to My Code Along. My Code Along, we're going to select that folder. Shouldn't be anything in it at the moment. We'll go to Terminal, like we did yesterday. We'll do a new terminal. And we're going to have to cd into, or actually we're going to have to create our application using Vite. So we'll do npm create Vite at latest. I'm just going to call this my to-do app.
Oh, your stream froze. How's that handled?
My stream froze, all right. There we go.
Let's see. So basically, what you did was you had I got the folder name and I Visual Studio Code. Open the code along and right click it.
Yeah, so what we did, we created a folder on the desktop. We opened that folder in in Visual Studio Code. And then once you open that folder in Visual Studio Code, you go up to the top up here to Terminal on your top menu bar.
I see that.
It might be under your couple dots if you have your screen smaller.
Got it.
So go to Terminal, click on that, go to New Terminal, and down at the bottom of your screen it should open a little console down there for you.
Yeah.
So what you do now, it should show that you are on your desktop or wherever you created this folder. We're in that My Code Along folder that we created, and you'll do an npm space create space Vite at latest. That's all one part, and then a space again, and then name your app. I just call it My To Do app.
Got it.
We'll hit enter. That should start creating some stuff for us. And you'll see again we have our choices of the framework we want to use. So you can just arrow down to React, hit enter, arrow down to JavaScript, hit enter. So the scaffolding project set up. So if we open up our My To Do app, you'll see the public, the source, and some other files in here. Our source has our app CSS, app JSX index, and our main JSX. So now what we want to do is just like it says here, it says done, now run. So we want to cd into My To Do app. And that cd again just says change directory. So we're changing our directory from that My Code Along folder, and now we're going to go into that My To Do app folder. So hit enter. We should now, you can see this shows our path here where we're actually at. So my desktop, My Code Along, and then we're in that folder My To Do app in there. So if we happen to go look at our folders, if I go to my desktop, I go to My Code Along here, and there's that My To Do app that we just created. All those folders are in there. So that's actually what we're looking at there. That's the path to it. So now it says run npm install. So we do npm install. It'll probably take a couple seconds to run and install that node module package that we put in yesterday. If you watch over here, eventually a folder will pop up above that public when it's done running. There it is, node modules. That node modules holds a bunch of things we can use as we go through. One of them, let me see if I can find it. I thought there was a React icon one in here, but probably have to install it to get it in there. See, it's still installing a bunch of stuff. There it went. 273 packages. Audited 274 in 1 minute. 102 packages are looking for funding. If you want to spend your money on it, feel free. So now that we did the npm install, we wanted to do this npm run dev. Npm run dev. Hit enter, and that should open a web page for us. It gives us a localhost site here. You can either copy and paste that in a browser, or you can hit your control button and click on it. And you should see that as your page right now. So anytime you do that npm install and all this and the run dev, this is what it's going to create for you. So you'll always see this anytime you create a new application. You always have to do this npm create vite at latest and put the name of your project in there. Choose React as your framework, JavaScript as your variant, unless, Jason, you want to get crazy and try TypeScript or something like that.
I might.
You can do that.
Stop the server after we're running it.
What's that?
How do we stop it now that we're running it?
You can usually, on the right-hand side, it usually gives you a list.
Actually, Control-C works.
Control-C to kill it?
Yeah.
Yeah, so normally it'll give you a list of them too on the right-hand side. I don't know why it's not showing up.
Yeah, I don't see that either. Killing it works fine though, so.
Yeah. I think you
Maybe
can.
just press H plus enter to show help.
Yeah, you can right-click on it too, and you can find Kill Terminal. I believe that'll do it too. So then once you select your frameworks and hit enter on that, it'll build the scaffolding for you, all the files and everything you need for all this. And then it gives you some directions to do. You just walk through these directions. You always CD into the app you just created. Then you do that npm install, which puts these node modules in there for you. And then that run dev will start the server up and get your web page up and going for now. You can see here I got a couple ports already in use for my local host. I probably got some of the apps from yesterday still up and running on them. Yeah, so you can see I still got some stuff up and running on these. So that's why my ports were in use, but it's not a big deal. They'll just assign a new one for you. And then, like I said, you can copy and paste that into a browser, or you can hit control and click on it, left click on it, and it'll open up your page for you. So first thing we want to do is we're going to clean up some of these files, because we're not going to use them. So we can go into app CSS, and we can hit Control A, and then you can delete all that out of there. We're not going to use this style for the app CSS. We'll go into app JSX. We can get rid of these logos here. We're not going to be using the logos anymore. And we can get rid of all this code in here inside the parentheses from that return. We can get rid of all that if we want to. Index CSS, we can just delete that file out. Move to the recycle bin. Main JSX should be okay. And index should be okay. You don't usually want to mess with index too much. What we can do in index is we can take this link out here if we want to. That's for the image. We're not using an image anymore, so we can get rid of that. And then if we want to change our title, we can call it my to-do app or whatever you want to call it. The stuff in the body you don't want to change necessarily because we want that root again, that ID, because that's what our main JSX uses to populate our page with. And then that script type module source is just getting that main JSX file so we can populate the page with the code from that main JSX.
So if we're making like a pure React app, do we want to just keep the HTML empty and just put everything in that like JSX function?
Which JSX
The
one?
app function.
The app one there?
Yeah.
The component? Yeah, for the most part, that's where you're going to put a lot of them. You can just, you'll end up putting your components in there.
So the index file is just like an empty placeholder to get filled by our React stuff?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And like I said, when we put this out to a web page eventually, the browser's always looking for that index.html.
Yeah.
That's the first file it looks for to populate your web page with. And so that's why they do it. They use this, like you said, kind of as a placeholder to store this main JSX. And this main JSX is saying take this app JSX, put it out to the screen kind of a thing. And so we'll stuff most of our components in here to get them to show up to the screen. And then we'll start coding components and that to put in there. So to start doing our components, and like I said, with React, it's component based, so we're going to do like little chunks at a time. Some of them get kind of big, kind of get bulky, and we'll see that when we start doing the code along for the final exam part of the code along stuff. There's a lot of functions that get put in these and can make it kind of big. I think this one here will use like 4 different functions for it. But so what we want to do is on source, we want to right click on there and say new folder. We're going to call that components. Just hit enter. Shouldn't be anything under it. And then in components, we're going to right click on components and say new file. And the first one we'll just call it todo.jsx. The next one we'll do a right click on components again, do new file. We'll call this todo form.jsx. And then finally we'll do one more file, new file in there, and we'll call it todo list.jsx. And again, you should start these out with capital letters, because when they're using the capital letters, you're showing that it's a component that you're creating. That's why app.jsx, the A is capitalized because it's a component, but the main is not, because the main's technically not a component. It's more like a JS kind of a file, JavaScript kind of file that we're using in it. So what we'll do is we'll start out in our form, and we'll go ahead and create a form for this. Before we start that, if we go to down here to the little gear in the bottom left hand corner, click on that and go to extensions. You should get lists of extensions. If you enter in here ES7, they got a couple things, this React, Redo. If you go down to this third one down, it should be like by DSZNAJDER. This one here, this ES7 plus React, redo React Native snippets. If you go ahead and install that, if it's not already installed. You got it installed? It's already installed for you. So what that does, that allows us to do that RAFCE or RCE, RFC, whichever ones we were doing yesterday. That'll allow us to do those shortcuts and save some time with that. I'm just going to close some of these out since we're not using them. Oh, crud, I did want to say that, but oh well, it's what it is. So, going back to our to-do form, I'm going to type in RAFCE. That creates this React component with the arrow function. You can see our function name to-do form, our export set to to-do form. And so what we'll just do is go in here, we'll create a form. So we're going to use the HTML form tag. We're going to give it a class name. We call it to-do form. And then we're going to do an input. I'm just going to say type is text. I'm going to put a placeholder in here. Update your task. Our value is going to be from an input that we're going to put in, so we'll do curly brackets and then input. Name is just going to be text. Put a class name on this. To do input. And then we'll put a space and say edit. And then we have to close out our input tag. After that input tag, we'll go ahead and put a button down here. Button type, and our type of button is going to be a submit button. We'll give it a class name for styling. And we'll just put update in there.
But this one's pretty small, so I'm just gonna go and create our first component. Let's just call this to-do.js. And then let's go right click components again.
So I'll go ahead and save that. And then if we go into our app.jsx,
First, let's go to SRC, right click this, let's go new folder, and then components. Let's name it that. And inside of this folder, we're just gonna do,
and we're going to call our to-do form it's not happy because we need to import it. So we'll do import do form from, and then some of those extensions, if you kind of get going and tab through them or hit enter, it will kind of finish it out for you. This constant count, set count, we can take that out. That was part of the code it starts us with. We save this. If we go look at our web page, hopefully we got a form started on it. I don't have mine yet. I got an error. Input's not defined. Got some other stuff. Input's not defined. So let's take that input out for right now. We'll just leave values blank. So there's our form that we just created, our update button right there. Can't type anything in yet. We haven't coded for that. Text box isn't showing. All right, let's take a look. So we put the input back in. That was caused us an error at the beginning when we took it out and put it in blank. So what we did to fix that is we put the constant up here, set the hook with our input, our set input. We assign it to the use state, and that value is going to be empty. And then we had to import use state from React to get our use state here happy. So we got that up and going.
The only difference between yours and mine is your use state is an but mine is for some reason.
Your use state in your code is not happy.
No, I'm saying like it is like on the when it imports that on line 1.
Yeah, hover over it. What's it say?
No, it's not seem like it ain't seem like, you know, yours could do this, but on mine it is.
So we'll put some functionality behind our button here. And we'll call this handle submit. So underneath our hook up here, our use state, we'll put a constant. And we'll call it handle submit. And then equals, and we're just going to give it a variable name here. We'll just call it E. And we'll make it the arrow function. Our curly bracket after our arrow function. And we'll say set input. And we'll just say e.target dot value. So this is just saying go out to target, which is going to be our button here, and get that value from the text out of here. And so then we need to add actually, that's another function. So let's change this here real quick. We'll do an E, prevent, default like we did previously in JavaScript. So what's going on is this submit button is going to want to refresh our page every time, and we don't want it always refreshing our page. So if we take a look real quick, if you watch up here, you'll see it kind of flash, and you see how it reloads every time. And because of that, my page should.
Most secure using a submit button, right?
What's that?
I think it's probably your submit button, right?
Yeah, using the submit button's fine. But that caused it to refresh, and we don't want it refresh, and we ended up wanting it to just stay on the page as we click that button. So we're going to use this prevent default method here. And then we're going to add our submission logic here. So we're going to do props, and props is just a way of passing variables through with React. So we're going to do on submit, parenthesis, squiggly, we're going to give it an ID, let's say math.floor, parenthesis, math.random, and we're going to times this by 10,000. So this is going to create an ID for us every time we add something to our list of to-dos. By multiplying it by 10,000, that's given us like a very random number, so there's likely little chance we'll end up hitting the same number. And then after that, we'll do set input to blank. So this props on submit isn't happy. When we go up into this to-do form for our parameters that we want to pass, we want to put props up in here. So this will allow us to pass parameters and values back and forth through our components. I couldn't think of what I was trying to say. So our handle submit, we'll call that down here on our form. So form, right after our to-do form class, we're doing on submit equals curly brackets, and we're going to call that method we just created. Is it handle submit? Yeah, handle submit. So now it's unhappy because of this on submit. We don't have a method or anything for that yet, but we'll get to it. It's just missing prop validations. I believe it's all it's mad about. Yeah, so we don't even have to worry about that too much. So to finish out this form, we want to make sure anytime we change something in our form that we catch it. So we're going to go in our form, and right after this class name here, we're going to do an onChange event, and we're going to handle any changes here. So handle change. That's not happy because we don't have a method for it defined. So we'll go back up. And above this handle submit form, or handle submit, or actually we can do it under. So we'll just do a constant here, call it handle change. And again, we'll just give it the value of E, usually because it's like an event, so that's why you'll see E used a lot of times. Curly brackets, set input, and that's what we say E dot target dot value. So all this is doing is create a variable called E here. And we're setting that input to go get that value from the target. And there's that value that we're looking for, is that input there. So that should be looking pretty good right
And then
now.
the arrow function, and we're gonna say e.prevent default floor, and then parentheses max. So if I go here, this to whatever we type in, which would just be e.target.value. So now if I save this, now let's actually, I'm gonna keep this line uncommented for now, but we're gonna go back to port to do.
So now if we save this, we should be able to I need to
Oh, I got it.
you getting there?
Yeah.
Kill
Says
my-
something about, text input. But then, yeah, I was kind of getting there too.
Okay, give me 1 second and I'll come look at it. Oh, run dev is what I meant. So I have an error myself, so let's get these fixed up and we'll keep moving on with this. So my issue is coming from main.jsx. I'm still importing this index CSS and we're no longer using it, so I can get rid of that. So that got me cleared up there. There's my task there. So that's back. So we're going to take a look at the to-do list now. Did the
What's the snippet called?
RAFCE to get it to pre-populate like that.
Oh, okay. Okay, I got it.
Yeah, it's on the board up there if you can see.
Oh, I see it now. I
Just,
see it now.
I've been looking back there at myself to make sure I remember it. So this to-do list, we are going to be setting some to-dos in this, so we're going to go ahead and create a constant. There's going to be another hook here, to-dos, and we're going to do set to-dos. So anytime you create one of these hooks like this for the use state and you name it to-dos, you know you're always going to set it to the same thing. So to-dos, set to-dos, it's going to equal use state. And this use state, we're going to use an array in here, so we're just going to set it to an empty array. Our use state's mad because we have to import it. And actually, I don't need to use a new line for it. You can use a new line if you want. It's easier, just put a comma in there, squiggly brackets, and use state. My use state's mad again just because it's an unknown word. And like I said, it's something to do with that one of the extensions I have installed. So first thing we're going to do is set up being able to add a to-do to our to-do list. So we're going to come down under here. We're going to create a constant. We're going to add a to-do. Let's say to-do arrow function if, and all this statement here that we're typing in is going to check and make sure it's not blank and there's not a whole bunch of spaces in here, or just start out with spaces or spaces in general. So we'll do a to-do and we'll do an or. And when we did some of the JavaScript stuff previously, we talked about regex and how you can check patterns and stuff like that. This is a regex, and it's going to just check.
Doesn't the or go inside the parentheses?
Oh yeah, good call. Sorry about that. So we're going to have, I don't know, what's this called, a forward slash or backslash? I can never tell the two apart. Slash, and then you're going to do shift, this number 6 key for the little caret right here. And we'll do an S and a star, that's checking for spaces. Put the $sign in here. Dot forward slash, I guess that is, or is that a backslash? I don't know. Forward slash test. To do dot text.
At the end of your run, is that a curly bracket?
At the end here?
Yeah.
No, it's parentheses, actually. I'll zoom in for you. Bring that down. So what this is just doing is this is checking for falsy JavaScript. That means it's just looking for nulls or zeros or anything like that, not a number. So it's checking to make sure there's something in there that should be in there. And then the rest of this is, like I said, it's regular expression, or regex for short. And so this checks at the beginning of the string is what that one's doing. The slash s asterisk is looking for any kind of white space characters, tabs, whatever, 0 or more times. And then the $sign says at the check to the end of the string. And then it's doing the test dot to do dot text. So it's checking that to do dot text, make sure there's not a bunch of white spaces in there. That way, make sure it all fits on the same line instead of making our buttons way bigger and crazy looking when we start putting some styles and stuff into it. Let me get back to where I was.
You can see. Let me clear this. Let me type stuff that makes more sense, because you're probably like, what am I saying? All right, so hold on.
Return.
All right, so now let's be like, let's do walk the dog. And it kept all the previous stuff here. So let me just refresh the browser really quick so it makes more sense. Let's just say like walk the dog, save here, and then let's do wash dishes. So now you can see it showcases walk the dog now, and then let's do, just say laundry here. So now it stores currently wash the dishes, walk the dog. And you can see the ID, it's a random number. So that if we're only doing like 10 to-dos, like there's no way, I mean the chance of it matching between 1 and 10,000, it's so slim.
Keep clicking on Visual Studio and it keeps opening up accidentally on me. So we have an add to do. And down here in our actual HTML, I'll put a H1 heading and say, what is on your list today? Close our H1. We're going to call our to-do form here. And call our function here. To-do form is not happy because we have to import it. Now it's happy. And if we go back to our app.jsx, we can take this to-do form out of here and put to-do list in here instead. And we can actually change that from to-do form to to-do list. I think if we save this and run it and look at it, it should look all right. And because what we did here is we took the to-do form was in our app.jsx and it was showing up on the screen. Well, we've changed this to to-do list, but if we look in our to-do list, we're now calling that to-do form in our to-do list. So by putting to-do list in our app.jsx, it has this to-do form in it, and so that to-do form's showing up in the list. That list is showing up in that app.jsx. So that's why it still shows up on the screen and it's not showing something different or different things are coming into it, because we just put the form inside this list and now calling this list in the app.jsx part of it. So it's kind of a neat thing about components is you can just take that component and stick it in another component and then call that main component or that component from app.jsx and it'll show up like we expect it to show up. So
that's essentially this
next
line
thing
of
we
code.
need to
Actually
do,
add this onto our to-do form. So let's go here and go to on submit.
is create some to-dos.
I'm gonna set that equal to curly braces add to do. Now let's save this here.
So let's go ahead and we'll create to-dos here. Well, let's put some space in between that. So we'll create a constant here for our new to-dos. And we're just going to make an array here and say to-do dot to-dos. And what's going on here is create a variable called new to-dos that's holding this array here. And this originally takes this to-do array. From here, it takes this to-do array. And this is a, oh, I forgot the name now, spread. Try to think of the name. Yeah, spread operator. So what the spread operator is doing, it's just, it takes everything in this to-do array and just copies it over into a new array called to-dos. So
Mr. G, I renamed it from to-do form to to-do input, and for some reason that fixed all of the import errors.
that's weird.
I then renamed it back to to-do form, and then it re-broke it. So I'm just gonna keep it as to-do input instead. Like that's.
All right, yeah, that's weird that it would
That's-
do it like that. Huh.
I feel like I'm being messed with.
Testing your skill ability over there. That's weird. So when you see the spread operator, you don't see it a whole lot. You will see it in coding. All it's doing is taking the original array, copying it and making it into a new array called to-dos or whatever the array here is named. So if you see that, that's what's going on with it.
Type storing our data, use like use into here. So we're not just updating the value that way right now until we do that.
So what we can do now, we got our new to-dos there. We'll go ahead and set our to-dos. So add to-do, new to-dos. Let's complete our to-do. Let's update the to-do. Do we want to do that? I guess it
B, C. Now you can see it's logging everything.
add to-dos, set to-dos.
I think your screen is frozen.
Did it?
Yeah.
Okay.
I can see your screen.
Well, yeah, but it's not moving. See.
There we go. It should be up and running again.
Okay, it's working now.
All right. So
In real time, which is essentially
this set to do, or this new to-dos we did, we need to move that. Actually, am I in the right method? So we need to move this up under this add to do, because it's just kind of sitting out there on its own. So after this return here, and we need to, I forgot my brackets around here, so get this cleaned up. Like that. Under that, we're going to put that constant we just created, new to-dos. And after that, we'll do a set to-dos. put our new to-dos in there. So what this is doing, when we add one, it changes our state up here for our set to-dos, and it fills in this empty array we have with the new to-dos that we create as we enter them in our text and that. So this add to-do, create the variable to-do, checks to see if it's got the right data in it, checks for a bunch of blanks, returns it, and it comes down here, and then we create this new to-dos. We take that array here, copy it to here, and then we end up setting it in our state using this new to-dos here, and that will populate that array there is what that's doing. So we can do a console.log, and we can put to do, comma, to do's. In here. And so when we add something to that list now, it should show so I'll say make the shower update. We'll see F12 on our console. So my to-do list does not provide an export name default. Export default to-do, so that's right. Props on submit is not a function. I'm getting that issue myself now, Jason.
What's that?
That props.onSubmit is not a function.
It's working now.
Yeah.
I assume it has something to do with that import being messed up.
Failed to reload app.jsx, system use syntax error, report non-existent modules. So let me clean some things up real quick. So I bounce my server. Every now and then you may have to bounce your server. I think when we did some C# stuff, we were doing a little bit of that. But when you start doing a lot of web development, there's times where stuff will get cached or you'll have issues. Sometimes you have to restart the server again, and that's what that run dev is doing. Let me bring this up a little bit higher. So when you do that run dev, that's what it does. That's starting your server up. That's what's showing our web page on that local host. And sometimes stuff gets cached in it. Sometimes it gets messed up for one reason or another. Sometimes you have to stop it, kill it, restart it. You'll hear people say bounce the server a lot in web development. That's all they're doing is killing the server and restarting it back up. So if you hear somebody say, I'm bouncing the server, go out and bounce the server, that's what they're saying is go kill the server and restart it back up. A lot of times that will clear out all the caches and all the stuff that shouldn't be there and get your page working again.
Gotcha.
So as we've been doing this, we set up in our to-do list, being able to add a new to-do to our list. We put it out to a console.log, and as I showed here, you can see in the console.log it printed it out there. Make the bed, let's make breakfast, and you can see it adds it to it. So you got a little array going here of the items in our array. You can see the ID numbers 7983. Our text is make the bed. Our ID for make breakfast is 168. Our text is make breakfast, and here's our other one that we already had in there. So
I am going to say, I'm surprised it didn't really update your address bar where it says, when you have typed in, because for me, I put it on my search bar that that was hungry. Hit out the end. I see the address has changed a little bit. They sent the part where on your console.
When you say address, you're talking this localhost part up here?
Yeah, it actually added like what actually put it into the text box after hitting the submit button. Versus it kind of like.
I don't think it's supposed to do that.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't think
Let me
you're-
take a look at that, and
You're
we'll.
not preventing the default action.
Yeah. So it shouldn't refresh at all. It should, like, if I put another one in here, like do the lawn, you'll see this shouldn't flicker at all because of that prevent default stops it from wanting to do that submit. So let's take a look at your code and see what we got going on there. Pick back up here. So now that we actually are able to add some to-dos, let's go take a look at our todo.jsx component here. And we'll do our RAFCE. Get that set up. Here we're gonna set some editing and stuff up. So under here we'll do another hook for our use state. So we'll do a constant. We're gonna edit this stuff here, so we'll do an edit, set edit. And then we'll do use state. And our use state this time is we're gonna be passing some info into it. So parenthesis, curly bracket, kept hitting the wrong one. And then we'll do ID is null, oops, comma, and then value is a blank string. And so what we're doing here is this ID gets us that ID that we had here on our, I was trying to find it, but I guess it, localhost kind of blew up on me again. But those IDs that we looked at earlier when we were creating to-dos, that's what it's searching for, is that ID for that we're going to be editing them. And then as we change it and that, it sets our edit for us, and that's what the set edit is for.
Oh, space complete. Yeah, I put the curly brace on the wrong end. Should be here. All right, yeah.
So on our return then here, we can get rid of all this stuff, all this parentheses stuff for right now. And we're gonna return, we're gonna say to do dot map and then parenthesis, inside those parentheses we're gonna say to do index, our arrow function, another parenthesis. And to me, this is where one of the ways React can get somewhat confusing with all these squigglies and the curly brackets and the parentheses and making sure they all match up and are right. It's just a lot of them there as you go through some of this stuff. And it can cause some issues if you're not careful. So here what we're going to return now is we're going to return a div, give it a class name, and that class name we're going to check here and say to do dot is complete. Make it to do row complete, else just to do row. We're going to use key equals index. And as you're using IDs and stuff in React, like we're doing here with this ID, you have to use a key to access some of that stuff to keep track of it. And as we do our code along for the final project, we'll be doing a lot of that. It'll make a lot more sense because we're kind of using a database-like thing in the final project. So it'll make a little bit more sense when we do it through there. But this is just a way of keeping track of stuff.
That term of come and bounce me, give me, it's all in a flashback to the database that we did in the last one project, you sure?
Yeah, and at times you'll be using the terminal kind of a thing, or a command line interface you may have to use at times when you're doing some of this development stuff. So if you're not too familiar with the command line interface, if nothing else, I'd bring up a command prompt and just kind of practice digging around through my different directories in my computer and stuff like that, just to kind of get familiar with going through a path, finding a path down through your folders using a command line interface. You can use the executables at times, so like if you want to play around, dig through the command line interface, go find where like Notepad or something like that is and go run Notepad from it, just so you can practice using the command line interface. They don't use it as much nowadays because of all the graphical user interfaces you have, like Windows. That's what Windows is, just a giant graphical user interface. Before Windows, you had to use command line interface, so you had to use something like this constantly to get to where you wanted to get to. And you can see, like, I put in dir, that shows me a directory of everything that's under this users DA Gegelman folder here, so you can see everything that's in here. So I could do, like, here's documents, so I could CD into documents, and again that CD stands for what? Change directories. So I'm changing my directory from DA Gegelman, I'm changing it now to this document. So now I'm in DA Gegelman documents. If I hit directory again, it'll show me everything that's in my documents. Here's my folders that I have all your guys' stuff in it for class, more class stuff, some odds and ends. So that's what this console is, or the terminal down there is doing, is it's using command line interface to get around through your folders and do stuff with it. Something good to get used to. I mean, you don't use it a lot nowadays, but it's nice to have the knowledge of what it's actually doing while you're doing that. I know, like I said, a lot of younger developers aren't too used to it because everything's a graphical user interface now. You just click on the pictures. So like you can see here, it didn't show me as good as I was hoping, but this here is almost what the command line is saying. It's like we're in this PC, we're in the documents folder, and here's all my documents. That's what the command line interface does. So it's like user DA Gegelman desktop. So if I go to desktop, I can find this my code along is on my desktop. There's my code along. There's my to-do app part right here is right here. And then this V and stuff like that. And that node.js that we installed yesterday, that npm run dev that runs all that kind of stuff. So just something to keep in mind as you're doing this. This terminal is just pretty much command line interface stuff that you're digging around through and finding your folders that way. So now that we got the div set up, we're just saying for our class name, check and see if to do is complete. If it is, do this to do row complete style, add that. If it's not, just keep the style as to do row. The key is going to be the index. And anytime you use these IDs, you got to have a key with it to access them. So now that we did that, we'll put another div in here. And we'll say key equals to do.id. And then we'll do an on-click event. On-click equals curly bracket, parenthesis, arrow function, complete, to do, via the to do ID. And then we just want curly brackets to do dot text to show up in there. Complete to do is not happy because we haven't defined it anywhere yet. We'll get to that. We close our div out. So we'll put another div in here with some icons in it. So we're going to do div class name equals icons. And then here we're going to do, it's going to be a little bit different than what we've done before. We're going to do RI close circle line. And we don't need this second one. We'll just self-close it here. And then we'll put another one down here, call it TI edit. And these aren't happy. What these are these are icons that we're putting in here. We didn't install our icons, so if we go look in these node modules, there should be like a React icons in here. And there's not, so we have to go install this. So let me find the right one. And just let me go ahead. I'll open a new terminal. New terminal. I'm going to CD back to this my to do app. And we are going to do an npm install React icons. Let me double check this before we run anything.
Yeah, stream froze again.
What's that?
Stream froze again.
Screen froze again. It's been having all kinds of issues.
When I first got that, I think the thing, I think the driver again. That's what I'll be thinking sometimes.
npm install React icon, so it's a dash icon. So we should be able to do that. It should run. You'll see it do the little install stuff down there. And now if we go look in this node modules, you'll see this React icons folder in here. That's what we just did, was that we installed the dependencies for React icons. So now we can go up here and import these. So we'll do an import curly bracket, RI, close circle line. And we're importing it from React dash icons slash RI. And I need single quotes around that. And then import TI edit from React icons slash TI. That's probably just an unknown word again. Surprise, surprise. You can see now that we imported those since we installed that React icons and imported these two icons. Our icons down here are happy. So let's take a look and see if they actually show up at this point. So we don't have them displaying out yet, but they should be there. So I think we're on the right path right now. Okay, make sure my code is right. So make sure I got my so if we go back to our to-do list, we have our complete to-dos, and we'll get that set up. What's that?
Just comparing to see if I have everything from your coding out good. Sorry.
Okay, that's all right. So now we'll create a method called, or a function, I guess, since we're talking JavaScript, complete to do. And we'll give it a variable name ID, arrow function, and we'll say let updated to-dos equal to-dos dot map to do arrow function and then we're going to do an if statement here and say if to do.id matches the ID. And why do we use the 3 equal signs instead of 2?
Because you're comparing in the JavaScript.
Well, we're comparing, we want the,
It's strict equality.
yeah, so it's looking at the value and the type and making sure they're the same thing. If you use 2, it's just comparing the values together. It doesn't matter about the type, but when you use 3, it's saying make sure these 2 types are exactly the same and the values of those 2 types are exactly the same. So it makes it more picky or strict, like Jason said, on what you're actually checking there. So we'll say to do that is complete equals not to do is complete.
Can't that just be true?
For which one?
Like, can't we just set it to true? If we're completing it, then
Yeah,
we should just
you
set complete to true instead
you
of flipping
can.
it.
Yeah. we're going to return our to-do down here. So after that, we'll do a set to-dos, and it'll be our updated to-dos. So what this is doing is it's setting our to-dos, our set to-dos up here. It's taking this variable we created, this updated to-dos, and assigning it the values of this to-dos.map, so it digs through our array for us and pulls out what we need out of it. And it's checking the IDs in there, and they're saying if they're comparable, the to-do is complete and not complete, that they match, kind of a thing. It's weird the way they write it up like that, but then return our to-do and then set our to-do with this updated to-dos. So then the next thing we can do complete to-dos used but never done. So up here, let's import to do from dot dash to do. We'll eventually use that. So we can take a look at removing a to-do now. To-do list. Let's see where I'm at. Looks good. So let's remove a to-do. We have a complete to-do. No, complete to-do is not happy. So let's scroll down in here. And what we can do is we'll do a to-do and bring that in, and then we can say to-dos equal to-dos, and we just did our complete to-do, so let's do complete to-do equals complete PLETE to-dos, complete to-do. That makes that one happy up there since we're actually calling it now. So we can do a remove to-do. So we'll do another constant. We'll call it remove to-do. Say the ID, arrow function, say constant, and we're going to do remove array so we can take out what we don't want in this array when we remove it. And we'll say 1, 2, 3 to-dos. So we're going to remove it from that spread operator array we created earlier. Is that in this one? Yeah, so we're removing them out of this duplicate copied array. I'm going to remove them out of there. And then we're going to do a filter on it. To do arrow function to do dot ID is not equal to the ID. And then set to-dos, and we're going to move the array from there. So here we just create a constant called remove array. We assign it the value of this to-dos array from the spread operator, and again that just copies the original array that we start out with. We're doing a filter, so our to-do matches the two IDs together, so we know which one to properly remove when we decide to do it. I'll remove to-do as declared, but value's never read, so we got to come back down here and call it. So we'll do remove to-do equals remove to-do. Let's save this. I guess I need to close that out and make it happy. Save that. See what's going on in here. Make the bed so it's still adding them to it. We should be displaying it. Let's get that display working and see. So check my code and see where I'm at. So let's go ahead and do an update to do, and that should be most of our methods. At this point. So let's say under complete to do, we'll put a space and we'll do a constant update to do. Say equal parenthesis to do ID and a new value. So what we do when we update this to do is we're just taking the ID and we're going to put a new value to it. Arrow function. Curly brackets. And then we're just going to go up here and copy this line of text, this if statement, because we're going to do the same thing. Because when we update this, we want to do it the same way as adding it, is making sure the proper values are going in there and not a bunch of spaces. So we can do Control V. The to-do's not happy because we want it to check the new value though instead for us. So that when they put a new value in there instead, it checks it for us and it does the exact same thing as the last one did. Make sure it's not falsy, and then checks for spaces. And then that update to do is not happy because, let's finish this up real quick. So we got our return. After that, we want to set our to-dos again. And you'll see we're setting these to-dos a lot in here. And we're going to say previous. And the reason we're setting these to-dos is because that is this state we're doing for this list, is we're setting these in this array here, and so we have to update it every time we do a function, and you can see here's a function here, our complete to do function, our update to do function, our remove to do function. And then so after every function we have to update that, and when we do this code along for the final project, you'll see we do it quite a bit in there because all the different steps, all the different functions we're going to have in there that have to be updated. So we'll do previous map, item, another parenthesis, item dot ID is equal to do ID is a new value, else just the item. So the way we did this, we did it somewhere else in our code. So this is just a tertiary statement here. It's just like a shorthand of an if-else statement. If it's equal, do this. If it's not, do that, kind of a thing. So it's like a shorthand for an if-else statement. That's the only way you can do them in this React in certain spots is the tertiary. So it'd be good to get used to doing some of that or understanding how it works. If you don't understand it, let me know and I can explain it to you a little bit better, but it's pretty straightforward. If that, do this, else do that. And so now we got our set to do set up on here. We got to call this. That's why it's unhappy. So we got to go back down here. Update to do. Update to do. I think we're pretty much done with that there. Looks like we're good. Our to do. Clean this up a little bit. So. So let's go back to our to-do again and try and wrap some of that up. We'll get this to-do stuff working better by passing some parameters into it, some props, and get that looking good. So we're going to submit an update in here. Constant submit update equals value and we'll say update to do edit ID value. Set edit parenthesis curly bracket ID null value and you can see React semicolons aren't all that important as some of it is. You should still get in the habit of and then your lines with semicolons. So we got our submit edit. And we're going to go just under that submit edit and say if edit.id true, return.
Is that in the right place? Shouldn't it be in a function?
It should be all right there, because technically it still is in our to-do function up there. So it catches it down in here, so it should work there. Let's give it a try and see, but that should work like that. Return, and we're just going to return to do form. We're going to return our component edit equals edit on submit. And we're going to do submit update. Oops. And we're just going to close that component out there. So we're saying if edit.id is true, return the to-do form with the edit, and then do the on submit update, edit change that we make. Edit ID and the value. Use the edit there and the ID and the value. Submit it. So let's do our icons here. And so we're going to have icons on our page. Let me show you what I'm talking about. Give me 1 second here. Terminal, new terminal. CD to my to do list app npm run dev. So in the end, this is what it's going to look like. And when we add a to-do, here's our delete icon and our edit icon. So we're going to put some code behind that so we can actually get our stuff to remove. Missing semicolon. To do JSX line 2. Well, that shouldn't even be there. So I'm missing some stuff in my code here. What am I in? To-do.jsx. Yeah, I'm missing some stuff. I don't know if I accidentally deleted it. Import to-do form. From So we got some unhappy things, and the reason they're unhappy is because we're calling some of these from another page for props. So what we need to do in this to-do.jsx is up here in our parenthesis for our parameters. Let's put to-dos in there. Complete to-do. Remove to-do. And update to-do. Why is our remove to-do not happy?
I wanted to give the products and nice and still something by accident with the remove to do.
Yeah, I see why it's not mad, because we're going to update our things here with it. So on our icon here, that RI closed circle line, we're going to do an on-click event. And do an arrow function. Say remove to do. And we're going to pass it in the to-do ID. And then we're going to give it a class name. Delete icon. And that should be closed. And then for this TI edit, we're going to do an on-click event here. And say set edit. Yeah, set edit. Parentheses squiggly. ID is to do ID value to do dot text. Should be good there. And then class name equals edit icon. So here when we click on it, it's just set in the edit state with the ID for the to-do ID, which is that key there, and then the value of the to-do text, and that's in that text box that we created on our form. Our to-do text. So that should be it for our to-do.
But Jen, I got a question.
Okay.
If I go to do, is it showing if we use the code like we hover over it? It's like unknown word.
Where is that? Yeah. Yep. I get that a lot. Like we're at.
Like a line, like 6.
What's your word?
For to-do,
To-dos.
unknown word.
Yeah, some of them do that. And the one I did yesterday is showing it like that. It just depends on the extensions you have installed in there. So if it's an unknown word or whatever, I wouldn't even bother worrying about that. Like I said, my use state up here is an unknown word, and it just drives me crazy because you think it's an error and it's nothing. It's one of the extensions we put on that goes out and checks it, and it's like, oh, what's this? I don't understand that. But like this RI close circle is a good enough word that it understands it. So I don't know. It's kind of very annoying if you ask me. So I need to go through and clean mine out eventually so I don't have to keep seeing that. So our to-dos, looks like we're done with the to-do stuff. let's go back to our to-do form. There's some stuff we need to add in here. So we're going to, no, I don't want that. I don't think we'll need that. I had some issues the last time. So we're going to pass some props into here to get these values set up right. So we're going to say props.edit, props.edit.value. And that props validation thing, it's not a big deal. You'll see that come up quite a bit in the code too, and that's more than likely one of the extensions we put on it to have it do that. So we want to set, we're going to set a use effect on here. Let me look real quick. So we're going to set a use ref. I think, do we need to import it? Yeah. So up here in the top, we're going to import a couple more things from React. We're going to import use effect and use ref, and that's just a reference, and that use effect does some effects on it. With the hook types, I would look some of that over between now and the end of the class. You'll probably see more of it in Mr. Gummased's class, but it's just some of the more common used hooks that you'll end up using in React. That use state, we've been using that a lot. That use effect, we're going to use that here in a second. So like right under here, we can do a constant, and we'll say input ref equals use ref. We'll just say null. And then under that, we'll say use effect, parenthesis, arrow function, input ref dot current dot focus. So all this is doing is setting the focus to the input box that we're using. Change handle, submit, handle, submit. Props, that's right. Looking good. So in our form, we're going to go right after our handle submit here, and we're going to do props dot edit question mark parenthesis and then the open bracket get rid of that one there. Input, and down here we're going to put our ref in here. Equals input ref. And then our button should be good. And then after the button, we're going to close that there, and then put the parenthesis behind it. This might be overkill. I don't remember doing all this last time, but so then what we can do is just copy this line from above here. So this input, and just paste it in here. Update here, and this one should just be for adding a to-do. Add your task, handle change, input ref. And we'll copy this button out of here. So after that, put our button on there, and then we'll say add to do. Add to do. Take that edit off this part here. And one of the examples I was looking at last night didn't have all this extra button, but it's just checking to see with this props edit which way it should go, whether it's editing it. If it edits it, it says use this, and if not, use this one here. So let me make sure I got everything closed up. So at the end of this here, we need to close our curly bracket, and that should make our form happy. Which part?
Line 46. We had copy and paste it.
Okay, oops, hold on a second. Hopefully, I think that's it. Once we get that done, we'll add some style.
I'm trying to figure out why is the greater than showing the next group is over than line 51.
And 50.
What represent?
Let me come over, I'll take a look. So we'll go to our app.jsx page. And under here we'll just say function to handle form submission. So we'll say constant handle form submit equals, I guess we don't need that, to do. And this handles the submitted to do data. We'll say console.log to check it. So in here, I'm going to change this to a div because we're going to style it. To do app. Just cut that, paste it over this. we'll see if this cleans up some of our that on submit prop problems we've been having, Jason. Let's see if. So we're gonna do. Pass the handle form submit function as on CT prop. And then to-do list, we'll do on submit. Equals handle form submit. Handle form submit, gotta spell it right. So we'll go to file, save all. Unterminated string constant to do line 32. Line 32. Did I not close that? Oh. Save that. Go back and look. Got some more errors. To do from components to do. Does this file exist? Is that to do? JSX line 2. Clean up some of these errors real quick. So I had a couple of errors. My first one was in my to-do.jsx. When I imported it from components, and I didn't need to do it from components since those components are all together relative. All I needed to do was put the .to-do form import there. That was my first problem. My second one on this to-do, where we put these props in up here, I had just the parentheses, but inside the parentheses I need the curly brackets to surround them. And once I put those curly brackets in and then surrounded them, my page came up. I can add a task. I can now delete the task. Do the lawn, add the lawn. I can update it, and now it's do the laundry. I can delete it, click on it, nothing happens. So code's all working now. Just need to add style, so I'm just going to copy the styles down and paste them in real quick.
I see you have to go, and then I was kind of code and kind of end up messing that up.
Okay. So I'm just going to copy this, and I'm going to put this in my app CSS folder that we cleaned out earlier. Save this. In there, now I got my styles in. I'll put those styles out in your repositories under a text file, and then you can just copy and paste them in. So give me a second here, I'll do that for you guys, and then if you have errors in that, we'll go dig through them and see what's going on with it. Let me find a text file here. looking over the code real quick, you can see you always start your imports up at the top of the page. We have the name of our component there. Usually right after your components where you want to put your use state, your use ref, your use effect up here at the top right under it. And then here, these constants, this handle submit, this handle change, those are our functions we created. So as we were going through these, we were creating these functions to go with them. So again, here's our use state set up here, and then a function that we have here. And in this list is where we have the bulk of our functions at. So we have our use state that we set up here, our hook. The hooks always go right up top like that. Our import statements at the very top. And then after your hooks, you usually start putting your functions in here. And so that's just kind of the basic page layout. We put all the functions there. This return again is what returns to the screen. That's what you're going to expect to see out on the screen. And then so our components here with the on submits, fire this stuff off. It calls these methods out of them. Or functions, I should say. I'm so used to calling them methods anymore. But so that's kind of the layout of the page that was going on. I know we jumped around a little bit, but I just want to explain that when you look at this, that's what you're looking at. You're looking at your import statements. You're looking at your import statements. You're looking at your methods. I broke something. Your import statements, your methods, or your import statements, your hooks, and then your methods, and then finally your HTML code that you're going to end up passing back. And then always make sure that export defaults down there so you can use them in other pages when we import them in. So that's just a breakdown of how it is. This one here, in our return statement, we did a little bit of a method in there first with this mapping to get what we want out of our array. And then our div was based on whether this is complete or not. And that's our style was based on that. The key is an ID, and anytime you use an ID like this, you have to have a key with it, and we'll see that again Monday when we start coding out the final project. With it being a database, we are going to have keys on it because that's our IDs to access the students or whatever we're going to do it with. And then you have on-click event, fires off our function, passing in that parameter of that to-do ID. And then this just splats out the text into that. So just kind of a quick breakdown of how it is. This main JSX, you should never have to really touch. The index HTML, you shouldn't have to do much in this if you want to change the title around. I don't know why that's, I thought I deleted all that. Maybe I didn't save it in time. But anything not used you can get rid of if you want. But usually you won't have to change anything in this because all it is usually this ID, a div with an ID in it, that root, and then a call to access the main JSX with this JavaScript page kind of that sets our root here and says go get this app component. The app component then has our other components and stuff in it that we may need to use.
So how does, okay, so does React like compile our JSX into like regular JavaScript?
It knows how to handle it. So
Okay.
So
So it's more like it changes how Node interprets it
Yeah, Node and React understand how to read the JSX.
Uh-huh.
And the JSX is like I don't know if you've ever looked at XML,
Yeah, I know what that is.
but XML, it's just, you can create your own tags and stuff like that. And that's
Yeah.
kind of what this JSX is doing. So it's using JavaScript, but we can put like XML.
Oh, is the X for extended?
Yeah,
Okay.
yes. And so that's the XML part of it is that X and JSX. And like I said, you can, when you,
Like at some point though, does it have to like get turned into regular JavaScript to get fed into the browser?
no, because the React renders it properly to where the browser understands it. And
Yeah, but isn't it just rendering it into what the browser understands? And the browser understands HTML and JavaScript.
yeah, and so that's where that JS part comes in, is that's the JavaScript part that the browser understands and stuff like that. And
Okay.
so you can use different tags, like our to-do stuff here is more of a XML thing because it's using its own tag name instead of following an HTML tag kind of a thing like that. So yeah, it just combines it and it allows the JavaScript to incorporate more HTML instead of having to do like a document.write and that kind of
Yeah.
stuff to get the HTML to properly show. Now we can just throw all these divs and stuff in there as part of it and still get it to show up properly. But you can use, instead of using JSX, we can rename this and just call it JS. And you can see the little icon changes to a JS here to show that it's using JavaScript.
Yeah, I know how that works.
Yeah, instead of JSX. And it'd still work all the same, but JSX is just becoming more popular for React than just regular JavaScript. So.